Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I do hope you're well. Welcome to the month of October. Well, it's actually, I think it's about the 6th or 7th of October. It's suddenly quite mild again. Or maybe it's because I've got a cold, it's making me sweaty. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yay, time for a tour. It's about a week since I had that sort of little mini catch-up tour at the end of September, when I was sort of identifying all the different jobs that needed doing and thinking about prioritising, what have you. Yeah, it was about a week ago, maybe 8-9 days ago. Wow, the garden looks really quite different today, as you'll see when we go out there. I've been grabbing whatever opportunities I can between showers to do those things which were the priorities, which was namely, what was it now, beans and chickpeas. The beans because I wanted them dry, and the chickpeas because I wanted them green before they had a chance to dry. It's odd to come to the, well, I'm going to stop speaking in here, I'm going to take you out there. What I was going to say is, it feels so odd turning up today and going, oh yeah, I forgot the garden had changed. Come on, you'll see what I mean. Here we are at the top of the garden, as always, at the beginning of a tour. But rather than diving straight in, I thought I'd just give you a long shot of the garden. As you can see, oh my goodness, just how much it's changed. Once those bean poles come down, once we lose that height, goodness me. I was actually stood at the far end of the plot the other day when I was sort of finishing up, just as the rain came again, looking back at the whole garden, and suddenly it looked massive. And I was saying to my friend, neighbour, you know what, I look at the whole garden now and it staggers me. It just staggers me that I did this whole garden again this year, as I'm sure you all get that feeling with your gardens too. But I was looking over it and thinking, wow, every single seed that was sown, every single little seedling that was brought on at home and then brought down here to the garden, every little seedling and plant that was planted out, every structure built, I look at it now and I think, oh my goodness, how did I do it? And like I say, I'm sure many of you feel like that at this time of year too, when the garden's starting to look a bit more bare. You think, wow, did that really happen this year? Well, yeah, it did. So, right, that's how the whole garden is looking, but let's have a little bit of more of a look in detail. So the parsnips, I've kind of skated over these in the last few tours because they're just getting on with things, but I thought let's have a slightly closer look today, because if you remember, I did transplant my thinnings, and I think what's evident is that the thinnings are growing, they are alive, but they're much stunted compared with, say, this one stayed in place, and this little tranche of them, none of these were moved. And then there's a couple more of the thinnings in here. Oh dear, that one's looking a bit sad. So yeah, you know, the thinnings needed to happen. I was happy to experiment with transplanting them, which, you know, it goes against everything that the books say. How are these? And they look really tiny in there. So in terms of hopes for them, well, look, even if they're teeny tiny little fingerlings, it'll be something to eat, won't it? And that's got to be better than just chucking them on the compost heap. So yeah, it'll be another, it's going to be another, where are we, October, November, December. It's probably going to be another 3 months or so before I start having any of these. Oh, I don't know, maybe I will have one before then. And now here are the big changes as the garden starts to be cleared. So obviously the other day I took out my chickpeas and rocking core. Still haven't had a chance to sharpen my secateurs yet, so they're still waiting to be chopped up, and they'll be heaped up and then covered. The next bed over, the last of the beetroot came out, and all the peppers, they were chopped up. My secateurs could cope with that, plus a bit of other sort of detritus from around the garden. Any organic waste material at this time of year, just pile it up, get it covered. I'm going to talk more about that in a separate video, why I do what I do. The chard, oh my goodness, actually we'll come to that in a second. Just look at the jaunty angle on this. All summer I kept saying to myself, give it a stake, give it a stake. So it's planted there. This is my lovely Cove Tranchuda, my Portuguese cabbage, Portuguese kale from Paul. Lovely. These little teeny tiny leaves, they're beautifully tender. Obviously once we get to the older leaves, they get a bit tougher and need a slightly longer steam or even a bake, but they're beautiful. So yeah, the first bed is covered. My goodness me. Yeah, the chard is doing great, and you know, it will just happily keep coming and coming all winter. Just keep harvesting, it'll keep coming. Beautiful stuff. And it's so lovely to have this colour at this time of year, isn't it? When so much of the garden is fading, and never mind fading, so much of the garden is gone. I will always grow chard, partly because I love to eat it, but also just to give me this sort of joy of colour through the dark season. So yeah, they're doing fine. This is the 2 rows of purple sprouting broccoli. I mean, they're proper bursting out of their nets now. I thought I was down here, I think it was on Sunday, and all day, well, I was down here for about 4 or 5 hours and I didn't see any cabbage white butterflies, and I thought, yay, they've finished. I'll take the nets off soon. But then today, just arriving here this morning, I've seen a couple flitting around. So yeah, the nets will stay on a little while longer. Oh my goodness. If the plants don't lift them off. So this is earmarked as my very next job. Main crop potatoes out, garlic in. That will be in a video soon, I hope. This bed also and this is the way I will go for the whole of the winter now, or not the whole of the winter, the rest of October. As I harvest a bed, or as I sort of, you know, crop and drop and cover a bed, at the same time I'm going to weed the paths, get them really thoroughly weeded. There's some naughty sort of perennials of self-seeded, so give it a really thorough weed. So this bed has now had, this whole bed, a really thorough weeding. This bed has also had quite a hefty weeding. This bed is really quietening down now, but it will be one of my main winter beds. So this is the Cavallo Nero, which you saw at the end of September, is also bursting out of its nets. Goodness me, I really need to get these nets off. And this is when I'm going to really be starting to harvest. I'll be picking this kind of stuff, you know, pretty much every day through the winter. If I'm not here every day, which I probably won't be, maybe once or twice a week through the winter, I will pick enough to have some pretty much every day. Oh, look, it does look weird without the bean poles, doesn't it? Suddenly you sort of get a sort of a sense of the size of the garden. And there goes Rusty. Okay, celery, just getting on with doing its own thing. This bed, like all the beds which become empty, this one at the moment I haven't covered because I'm waiting. Once I've done the squash harvest, I'll use this bed for chopping and dropping all the remaining squash foliage, and then this bed can get covered. And in the meantime, I can start looking for leaves, grass clippings, other things to cover the squash beds in. when they're empty. But yeah, it's like a sort of a dustbin for the garden. It's kind of handy as I'm whizzing around, yanking things out, just chuck them on there. Oh, it all really is dying back now, isn't it? So I was just saying that I think for the next video it's going to be the spud harvest and sorting out for garlic, and then it'll be the squash harvest. Can't wait. So all of these brassicas, this is 2 rows of calabrese, 2 rows of Savoy. Again, they're doing fine, they're bursting out of their nets. I'm sure some of you will have much bigger plants than me for both the calabrese and the Savoys, but these did go in really late. It's just a few delays, and I didn't get the onions out when I normally would, so these went in later, but they're fine. They're absolutely fine, and they will give me food over the winter. That's what it's all about. So yeah, a load more weeding. And you can see here on the end of the path where the soil is really quite disturbed, that was getting dandelions out. Anyway, it's done now, that's good. The rest of the garden isn't, however. No beans. No beans. Oh my giddy goodness. I've had such a great harvest of beans. I'm delighted with them. Best harvest in a few years, actually. No doubt because we had a wet summer. If you remember on the end of that bed, I had leeks. I'd sort of pickers almost like spring onions through the summer. I must remember to take these home. I want to clean them first. I've just had the last of them out. Oh, I can smell them even from here. I took them out about half an hour ago. Give them a bit of a clean up, get them home, chop them up, chuck them together with a couple of potatoes, and that's a really yummy soup. I mean, who doesn't love leek and potato soup? Gorgeous. Now, this bed is currently a bit of a storage place for my bricks. This will be the broad beans. Again, that's something that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks or so. I was going to push on and try and get it done this weekend, but the ground is really, really sodden at the moment. And bearing in mind what happened in May with seed rotting in the ground, I thought I'm going to leave it a few days, just let the ground dry out a little bit, then get them sown, and then I'll be covering them with these sort of nets afterwards. Just sort of protect them from the worst of the heavy rain over the winter. But yeah, that's another job in the next couple of weeks. This was an ex-tomato bed as well, and you can see this is now piled up with, this is chopped and dropped climbing bean matter. That's actually ready for covering. I'll do that after I've stopped talking to all of you lovelies. This is way more bean material, but none of this has been chopped yet. I just want to chop it up a bit, because if I leave it like this, let me show you, you see all the stems. If I just leave it whole, they just won't compost down. So yeah, get that all chopped, and then this bed can be covered. This was the cucumber bed, so again, cucumber frame has gone. Another structure down and stashed. And also you can probably see here this path, same treatment as I was mentioning a minute ago about doing a really thorough weeding as I've worked these 2 beds. Then we come on to I almost have, actually it's even worse on this one, look, I almost have grass paths in my beds. No, I'm not keeping grass paths in the beds. I don't need the extra strimming work. But yeah, this is what my garden looks like when I haven't done any weeding for a whole year, pretty much. I can't believe I'm still reeling over the fact that in the last sort of 6 weeks of videos, I kept pointing out the Muscat de Provence and hadn't seen this one. This one, Crazy Vine, it was across the path, up into the cucumber frame, along the top of the cucumber frame, back down, across the path, through the delicata, and that's where its stem starts. You went a long way round, didn't you, beautiful thing? You went a long way round, and I can't wait to scoff you for it. Okay, yeah, so this is all, obviously, once I've done the squash harvest, I will take down the TPs. I was going to do it the other day, because we've been so wet, I really want to get all these sticks out of the wet ground, because they'll just rot. I was going to do it, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to end up disturbing squash, snapping. I thought, yeah, just wait until you've done the squash harvest, Vivi, and then you can get on with getting them down and stored. Bed number 4, 0 change. This is all just doing its thing. I'm not going to give you too much of a sneaky or the squash, but you can see, yes, there are squash all through. The ones that were going into the cold frame, I sort of teased them back out because I did want to give the path a bit of a trim. They won't really do anything, but one of them had one was sort of resting just on the path, and as I moved it, you can see it snapped off. I've just sat it there for the minute. Oh, I've just seen I've got a Dulong Dillon pepper to harvest. Woohoo! Yeah, so nothing has happened here apart from me pushing the vines back into the bed so that I could get, just get around for strimming and trimming. Oh my goodness, look at these paths. I've been so good this year about not freaking out about weeds though. Good for me. The Coco de Pampol, Coco de Pampol, they're getting to the drying stage. All of them now are for seed saving. So I think that's probably going to be another, in the next 2 weeks, to harvest them for the seeds. Any material that's left, again, just chop and drop it. I'm saying about 2 weeks because we are supposed to now be having fine dry weather. Whether we do or not, we'll wait to see. Oh, and just a word on the squash. I am dead keen to harvest. Strimmer starting. I'm really, really keen to harvest just because it's like Christmas when I do, for me. But the reason I am going to get on with it now rather than wait much longer is because I've been keeping an eye on the nighttime temperatures on the weather forecast. And it's looking like in a couple of days or so, we're going to be falling into single digits at night. 7, 8, 9 degrees, they could cope with, but I don't want to risk leaving them out when the temperatures drop much lower than that. So yeah, it's just an excuse to do the harvest, really. Brilliant. No change here either, except I think is the net lifted even more. I mean, look. Oy vey. Oh, and I really want to get the nets off because I had that spare. I mean, look at its mash. There was another Cove Trantuda, that's the Portuguese cabbage, like the one at the top there from Paul. And I had a spare spot, so I thought, I'll just bung it in on the end here. Poor thing. It wants to be 4 foot high. The nets are only 3 foot high. I'm pretty sure, though, in terms of the cabbage whites, that, yeah, in another week or so, they'll have gone completely. I finally have a path again. I haven't had a path here for months. So, yeah, that was the little one that came off. It was this sort of tangle of vines that I'd introduced into the cold frame. There were a couple of really teeny tiny fruits on the ends, but they were never going to come to anything, so I cut it back and let the fruits that are on there get the last bit of energy. Oh yeah, I've got my geraniums now are in the cold frame to overwinter. I need to give them all a bit of a dead head, a bit of a prune. Now at the moment, the windows are open. It's plenty warm for them. Plenty warm. I want them to dry out a bit as well, because they were sat in trays full of water because of all this rain and me not being here. So yeah, let them dry out a little bit, and certainly once I would say once our nighttime temperatures are sort of 2 degrees or lower, then I'll shut up the cold frame, tuck them up for winter and hope they survive. Oh yes, this is another job I mentioned. Oh, I need to do a big harvest of the rosemary, get it cut back. It's gone a bit mad. And I think, opla, hang on a tick. I think the sage under there has finally given up the ghost. I mean, it was really old and woody. It's been in there about 10 years. So, oh, I'm looking forward to a sort of herb bed and all my plants. Oh my goodness, that's 2 streamers now. Can you hear me, Mother? I'm really looking forward to having a quiet sort of tidying of flowers and herbs day. Oh, Taunton Dean, you are a magnificent beast. Beautiful. That colour gets me every time. And it's another one, you know, as we sort of head into winter and we lose so much colour and brightness in the garden. I love any of these brassicas that have got a bit of purple to them. In fact, so the kale, I can't wait to get the covers off and show you, because it's the most deep dark burgundy colour. Gorgeous. You imagine on a morning after we've had a light frosting, you've got the beautiful colour of the chard bursting through, and then that deep burgundy of the kale, and other brassicas with their purple stems. Oh, gorgeous. It almost makes me want to look forward to frost. I'm not ready for frost yet. Yeah, so as I was saying, you know, there's a lot of tidying up to do in the herb bed. That would be a nice, quiet job. You know, I'm not in a hurry to do it. It's more important for me to think about getting the potatoes out, getting garlic in, broad beans in, squash harvest. But I would say that in the next couple of weeks or so, this is going to have a really thorough going over. And will suddenly look really quite bare as the rest of the garden. I'm just starting to have a little bit of a tidy up on the deck. I think the squirrels have gone mad in this grow bag. I've got a feeling I'm going to have a forest growing next year. But yeah, obviously the geraniums have gone away. I'm leaving these roses out because they're perfectly hardy. Oh my goodness, yeah, it really is. It's the end of summer. I mean, frankly, it's been the end of summer for weeks, but I never quite want to let it go. So look, where did the garden go? Where did it go? Well, I can tell you where most of it went. Hang on. So, just for orientation, this is the end of my garden, my fence. My shed is down there. But on the back of my fence, it's now that time of year. All my beans are stored and they're all bundled in groups. Some are the tomato canes, some are bean canes, some are for the cucumber frame. Actually, in doing it the other day, I was getting a bit snarled up in weeds and bits, so this needs a really, really thorough going over. But you know, again, it's one of those jobs, it's not urgent, and I'll quite enjoy it. I know people think weeding, you're mad, Vivi, but I do quite enjoy it. So yeah, I look at this and I think, wow. That's what I mean when I was saying right at the top of the video, wow, did I really plant all this? Did I really grow every single one of these little seeds or little plants from seed? Pretty much. So, goodness me, that's how we are at the beginning-ish. Well, end of the first week of October. when we come to do the November tour, which will only be 3 weeks now because I'm late again, you know what, it's going to look really, really different again. But before we even think about that, there's plenty of lovely work to get stuck into, plenty of lovely harvests to gather. I can't wait. Alright, my lovelies, I will see you all again really soon. Yeah, in the garden again. Hang on a sec. Sorry, I had an ant crawling on me. I don't want to be bitten. Yeah, I will see you again really soon, probably for the potato harvest. And in the meantime, I hope you will all stay well and enjoy whatever of your last harvests you're getting. And I know for a lot of you, you're in parts of the world where you simply, it's too cold, too much snow to keep a garden going through winter. So I hope you're having fun doing your clear up and you're putting everything to bed. So until next time, cheerio everyone.